Catherine McGrath, first of all, congratulations on your appointment as CEO of Westpac New Zealand, and thanks for your time. It must be a busy first few days for you. So, Catherine, your career began in New Zealand, but you've spent quite a bit of time in global markets, mainly the UK. Can you give us a bit of a rundown of what you've been up to and what's drawn you back to New Zealand and specifically to this role?
So the most recent role was in Barclays, and I was leading what was called the channels business. So that meant all of the frontline colleagues in branches and contact centres and all of the digital team as well. And a particularly challenging time to lead that business through COVID, given that the UK clearly had quite a difficult COVID situation. So what's brought me home is also linked to COVID. I'm close to my family, and obviously travel over the last 18 months has been particularly challenging. So it made a lot of sense to choose to be on the same side of the world as my brothers and sisters and my mother.
Fair enough. Okay, so when you were in the UK with Barclays, you will have been in the thick of evolving banking technology there, including the move to digitisation, open banking, data sharing, where they seem to be a bit further ahead than we are here in New Zealand and Australia. What are your observations about those data and tech trends in the UK, and where's New Zealand at in comparison?
So I think the data trends are amazing because what they can do is put individual consumers or businesses really in control of their data and therefore the services that they get from a financial services provider. And so what that means is they've got more choice. And so what that means is we need to continually lift our game to make sure that we're providing great insight as well as products and as well as support for customers as they navigate through what's quite a complicated financial set of circumstances at the moment. So clearly New Zealand and Australia are still on that journey, but I think there's a great thing in that we'll have a chance to learn from both the strengths and the weaknesses of the UK response as we start to deploy that to our own consumers in these markets.
And turning to Westpac New Zealand, so earlier this year, after a review of the business, the Westpac Group made a decision to retain 100% ownership, picked out a few areas for improvement. What's your view on the business's recent performance and also the outlook for the industry, particularly in light of rising cash rates and the higher capital requirements flagged by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand?
So firstly, I think Westpac New Zealand has performed strongly, and that was shown through the recent results. As we go through into looking into 2022, clearly there's some real challenges across the industry, particularly around costs and margins. So we will have the same challenges that you're facing in Australia and really that the rest of the industry is facing as well.
Okay, and on the industry-wide issues, the housing market, like in Australia, prices have been really booming in New Zealand at levels described, I think, by the central bank as unsustainable, but the momentum is likely to be impacted by the rising rates going through at the moment. What do you think countries like Australia can learn from how regulators in New Zealand and the UK have responded to the house price boom?
So I think the New Zealand regulator has taken a number of steps to really try and impact house price growth, but I think it's too early to tell the extent to which that will actually play through. But I think we all want our friends and family to be in a position where owning a home is within their reach, and so I'm very hopeful that a combination of rates and some of the interventions will make home ownership more affordable.
And on New Zealand's economy more broadly, things look to be really powering along there in the recovery, and the central bank there was one of the first in the developed world to reverse rate cuts made during the pandemic. Do you think this is going to provide a bit of a glimpse to Australia of what we might expect here as rates rise?
So I think the only thing that's really certain at the moment is the outlook is actually very difficult to read, because it's hard to tell whether in New Zealand or in any other country that we've really seen the full impact of the COVID flow through into the economy. So I think it's positive to see the Reserve Bank in a position where it's saying we think we can start to edge interest rates back up again, but very difficult to tell on what that outlook's going to be. So I think the key thing for the teams here is that we need to have great plans for a range of economic outcomes, because the only thing that's certain is it's very difficult to read at this point.
And on that economic recovery and the outcomes, what is the importance of things like the borders reopening for New Zealand next year, particularly for key industries like tourism and agriculture?
So I think the first thing that surprised a lot of New Zealanders is how resilient the economy has been despite the fact that the borders have been closed. But it would be lovely to have them open and to see sectors like tourism and retail really, really start to take off again as we welcome more people back to our shores. But clearly we'll be guided by the government as and when that can happen.
And Catherine, finally, on a lighter note, what are you enjoying most about being back in New Zealand after spending so many years away?
I'm really loving being able to spend quality time with the family. I think when you're away and you come back for a couple of weeks holiday, it's always really busy. I'm starting to get to do the normal things. I'm picking up my nephew from cricket this afternoon. So lovely just to be able to watch him play sport. And the second thing is I'm loving being near the water, which I think for many Australians and New Zealanders really resonate. The Thames is beautiful, but less easy to swim and enjoy a bit of board sports in. So lovely to be back near the sea.
Well, Catherine McGrath, it's been great speaking to you. Again, congratulations and all the best for the new role.
Thanks very much.